Hello and welcome to Rule of Three's video review for Fairy Fencer F, a JRPG from Compile Heart, and brought over to the States from NIS America. So this is the new IP from the Hyper Neptunia team, and so since it's the new IP, I don't really have any background information to give you on it, other than I wasn't expecting too much, and I actually enjoyed this game a little more than I thought I would.
Lost.
Oh, now what? Are you gonna fight next?
Don't be stupid! When something like this happens, we must report it to the company. Let's get out of here.
So the story of Fairy Fencer F is thousands of years ago. There's a good goddess and an evil god. They were duking it out, and eventually it came to a draw, and they both sealed each other with a bunch of swords known as Fairies. Now some of these Fairies ended up on the planet, and people have been searching for them because they give super awesome, amazing powers and strength. Now all the Fairies also are imbued with creatures known as Fairies, that are basically kind of the soul of the sword. Now fast forward to the modern time period where the characters are at, and you play as the hero Fang, a very lazy, always hungry, self-centered, reluctant hero who really doesn't want to do anything but sleep and eat, much to his fairies, desires. His fairy Aaron basically, or before I get into Aaron, he gets his fury by basically just pulling it out of stone, thinking he's going to be able to wish for an insane amount of food. And then he is told by Aaron that he has to go collect all 100 Furies around the world to free the goddess, and also so she can regain her memories because he has amnesia. Fang doesn't really want to do it, but does it because he just wants food, and he gets a wish if he frees the goddess. You also meet another character named Tiara, who's also trying to free the goddess, but she's a little bit more mysterious, and you find out more about what her actual motives are as the game progresses. Story-wise, it's actually really, really good. I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the characters, even though they fall into your typical anime character tropes for the most part. They just have enough quirks and personality to really make them, entertaining. And like I said, the story is really good and sets up nicely for kind of a new kind of universe for this franchise.
I'm even stronger now.
Gameplay is where this game gets a little dicey. I'm going to try to do a positive and then a negative. So the first positive is the actual combat system. It's a turn-based RPG, but you move your character on, you have your battle map, and you can move your character on that map based on that character's movement radius. Now, also, you have to take into consider that character's attack radius, which is depending on how much you've upgraded, which I'll talk about in a minute, and get into range of your enemies to attack. Now, this adds a really nice strategic element because enemies have the same rules. You have to move within their attack space and can only attack with their attack range. So you can position yourself to minimize risk but maximize kind of how much damage you can potentially do with each character. This is also good because the game is heavily attack oriented. It doesn't want you to play too defensively. The game is all about attack, 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 because you have this fury bar at the top, and as you attack and take damage, it fills up, and once it gets to a certain point, you can bust out what's called the fury mode, which basically raises your stats to ridiculously high levels, and you can do more damage and take more hits, as well as more magic damage and all that stuff. It's a really nice kind of risk-reward system because you don't want to, go balls to the wall, because if you do heal or wait and do like a more defensive move, your fury bar goes down quite a bit. So you have to kind of balance the two to make sure that, you can build up your fury and have enough attack and, extra attack to get things killed, but not, at the risk of you dying. So it has a nice strategic value. On the downside, so negative is frame rates and the graphics. For a late stage PS3 game, the game looks pretty bad in terms of visuals. It looks like this should have come out more of when the PS3 was just new. I probably would have forgiven it a little more, but it looks pretty crappy compared to some of the other JRPGs in the market, like Final Fantasy 13 or even the Tales series, the two Tales games on the PS3, which look infinitely better. So that's one major negative. So back to the positives is the customization of the game for characters. As you play, you're going to get what's called weapon points for battles. These weapon points can be spent to increase parameters such as physical attack, physical defense, magical attack, and so on and so forth, as well as unlocking new skills, new abilities, and new combos. It's a nice little system because it allows you to customize basically what you want each character to do. Do you want this character to be more of a tank? Do you want this character to be a nuker? Do you want this character to be, magic range or physical range or whatever you want them to be, or combo heavy? or Heavy Fury or whatever. It's a really nice system and it allows for you to kind of pick how you want each character to work. On the downside is this system is extremely grindy. I mean, just the average battle, you'll get anywhere between 3 to 6 weapon points, unless you have a buff, which I'll talk about in a minute. And each move at the beginning is, 5 to 50, but then it'll jump from like 100 to 300 to 1,000 to 2,000. And it gets ridiculous. So you have to grind. The nice thing is, where the game's not short, you don't really have to do that for the most part, but I would recommend it. So it just gets overly grindy at times, and you fight the same monsters over and over and over again. So back to the positives are the Godly Revival system and Fairies. So as I was talking about, you go around the world collecting these Furies. Every Fury has a fairy attached to it. You can attach these fairies to your weapons, or a fairy to a weapon, and it increases your parameters and gives you nice little buffs like, increased physical damage, increased fire resistance, increased fire damage, stuff like that. As well as when you go into what's called the Godly Revival system, which allows you to take the swords out of either the evil god or the goddess. It adds on what's called world shaping bonuses, which I'll talk about in a minute, as well as a new kind of buff like, increased gun damage or something. It's a really nice system. I really enjoy it. There's just enough fairies to kind of make you kind of try to figure out which ones have the right buffs that you want to give to each character. And it's a nice system, especially the Godly Revival system. That was kind of fun. On the downside is dungeons. Dungeons are extremely linear, extremely small, and it only has about maybe 2 to 3 monsters per map. But the crazy ones sometimes have 5. And you can change it with world shaping, but still, it's not a whole lot of monsters. You're going to fight the same enemy over and over and over and over and over again on the same map and just grind that. That gets... I wish that these dungeons would have been bigger instead of just like these 2 to 3 zone maps. It would have been nicer to have more, open dungeons and stuff like that. Back to the positive, world shaping. World shaping is how you define what areas are going to have what. So as you do Godly Revival, like I said, they get a buff that does something to the world. These, usually it's a positive and negative. For example, the one I like using is increase experience points by 30%, but I lose 10% of my physical defense because of this. In order to counter this, you can use multiple swords on multiple locations. So like at the end, you can have like 60% EXP, 10% physical defense down, 20% magic down, and stuff like that. So it allows you to customize kind of how you want to do that zone. It's a really cool system. Let's see. I think that's pretty much it in terms of gameplay. Like I said, there's pretty much for every pro, there's a con that I can use against this game, which is a shame.
Fairies!
Fury form transformation complete.
All right, let's go!
Fairy Fencer F, like I said, is a good RPG in terms of for a new IP. It sets up a world really good and has a nice story and character element. The downside is some of the gameplay issues just make it to not be quite as meaty as I think JRPGs have been becoming lately, and the next game in the series, which has already been planned, as long as they can buff up the gameplay, maybe make the stories a little longer and kind of redo how some of the dungeons and stuff like that work, game will be fantastic. I'm giving it a rent verdict. And that's pretty much it. It's a fun JRPG. I enjoyed it, like I said, more than I thought it would. I went into this game really knowing nothing and just kind of expecting nothing. I came out really happy for the most part, other than, obviously, other than the problems I had. So that's it for this review. This coming Wednesday will be Hyrule Warriors for the Wii U. And yeah, that's it. So thanks for listening, everybody. Make sure to check out the website for all my postings and news that I update, as well as our podcast that goes up on Sunday. Like us on Facebook and Twitter, all that good stuff. Thanks for listening, everybody, and always remember to trust in the rule of 3.